and then we will head out to the cleanup areas. So what we'll do is we'll go to Punta Menabique, which is the peninsula near the Rio Motagua, and work all the way down towards the Rio Motagua. Our teams will be collecting plastic from the ocean, from the coastlines. They'll be taking it and loading it up into what's known as super sacks. They're the large blue bags that we use to transport our plastic waste. They're filling up each of these super sacks, they're loading them onto their vessel, and then they're consolidating them together at a pickup location. So after a certain amount of days of cleaning, we'll have an absolute mountain and tower of plastic in these super sacks. And then we have a landing craft barge that actually comes and picks this up. And then all of our vessels will go from the shoreline to offshore, loading up all of the plastic onto this vessel, which then takes it back to our facility. Once it gets to our facility, each individual super sack is photographed, weighed, and documented. And then all of that plastic is sorted by type, color, and condition. And then once we reach the necessary minimum order quantities for our recycling partners, we then bale that plastic into small cubes and it's transported to our recycling partners. So as I mentioned, we document every step of the way. We take photos before, during, and after the cleanups. And our crew is cleaning, millions of pounds of plastic from these coastlines, in Guatemala.
Welcome to another FairTalk episode. Today I'm here with Alex Schulze, co-founder and CEO of 4Ocean, an ocean cleanup company that not only removes plastic and trash from the ocean and coastlines, but also educates and engages individuals, communities, and businesses on the issue of plastic pollution and empowers them to make a difference. We are very excited to have you on our show today, Alex, and would love to dive into some details of your work at 4Ocean and your role in the Motagua River project, which we reported on recently. So thank you so much for being here. To start with, can you please give us an overview? How does your business operate? What inspired you to found it? And where are you at today?
Sure. Well, Marie, thank you so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure to meet you and excited to dive in. 4Ocean was started in 2017 by myself and a buddy. We got the idea on a trip to Bali, a surfing trip, and we wanted to find a way that we could pay fishermen to collect plastic instead of catching fish. So we started locally, cleaning by ourselves. We expanded the business and started out by selling our products, which were our recycled bracelets. And for everyone sold, we would remove a pound of trash from the ocean. The business grew very quickly. We expanded from Florida to Bali, Indonesia, and into Guatemala. And we employ over 200 full-time captains and crews around the world. And to date, we've removed over 35 million pounds of trash from the ocean. So very, very proud of the team. We've done an amazing job cleaning plastic from the ocean, but we're just getting started. So the Rio Motagua and Guatemala is a place that is very close to our headquarters here in Florida. And it's somewhere where we've expanded our impact to try and stop plastic from entering the ocean. The Rio Motagua is one of the most polluting rivers in the entire world, and it dispels a ton of plastic into the ocean every single year. So our team is located in Puerto Barrios and operates in 3 satellite locations near the Rio Motagua and cleaning up plastic on the surrounding coastlines, oceans, as well as trying to stop it before it gets a chance to enter the ocean.
Mm-hmm. And before we dive even further in these specific projects, can you briefly also elaborate on since you have so much experience and you're recycling and collecting so much plastic trash, what are the challenges associated with plastic recycling, particularly regarding the toxicity of the material and the limitations posed by the multitude of plastic types, and how does your organization navigate these complexities? What are your solutions?
So that is a very, very good question. And it is a very complex issue because our operations are located all around the world and we have access to various forms of recycling infrastructure. So the materials themselves, when it comes to the recyclability, can be very tough for some of the plastic that we're collecting. A lot of this plastic has been out drifting in the ocean for long periods of time. There's UV degradation, there's contamination, it becomes very brittle from the wind, the tides, and the surf. And there's times where the plastic can be very difficult to recycle. So we have actually spent a ton of time investing and really learning how to take a material that might have been UV degraded or contaminated through ocean plastic, just its background, and turning it into a usable material. Our goal is, and our highest priority is to recycle as much materials as we can. Some of the issues that you run into around the world are access to waste management infrastructure, the logistics that it takes to transport this material around the world, and even to process it locally. Sometimes there's not the actual machinery, equipment, or partners that exist. So we are now setting up our operations in different areas that have access to these recycling means, so that we can process the materials and be able to recycle them into a usable feedstock for manufacturing products or other items.
You talked about the Motagua River project. What does it look like there specifically as an example? You were already briefly mentioning where it's located and that it is one of the most polluted rivers in the world. How is that possible? Why is there so much accumulation of trash there? And how are you working locally to overcome the challenges you were just mentioning?
Sure. So the reason why there is a ton of plastic that's in the Rio Motagua is because it all depends on the factors of the surrounding areas. So one thing that we look for in our cleanup locations, it's kind of a formula. If you have a developing country that has a lack of waste management infrastructure, some form of elevation, and a rainy season, you will almost always find plastic in the ocean. And because what happens is when there's not a waste management infrastructure in some of these surrounding cities, what will happen is that plastic will be tossed into the streets, into the gutters, into the creeks. And then during these heavy rains and heavy floods, plastic is being flushed down to the rivers and the rivers into the ocean. So the Rio Motagua is a river that spans all through the country of Guatemala. And it starts out near Guatemala City, where the main landfill is. And I believe it's over 100 cities that it goes by, that this river goes by and before it enters into the ocean. And what's happening is a lot of this plastic is being washed out with these heavy rains, and it's entering into the Rio Motagua, and then that's being flushed into the ocean. So it is a very, very highly polluting river, and it's a place that we're working hard to try and stop the plastic before it has a chance to enter the ocean.
How do you build up these waste management infrastructures? Are you involved in that as well?
So we are somewhat, not a ton. Our primary focus has been captains and crews cleaning plastic from the ocean and coastlines. That's been our main focus, and now we're starting to scale and get more involved in that. And it's a very complex issue. I mean, this is something that is a truly a global problem, and it comes down to the economics behind recycling, the logistics and transport, the infrastructure and investment needed in order to facilitate. I mean, it's a lot. And a lot of and now even getting into the plastic materials themselves, the recyclability, the way that these packaging materials are designed. Some of them are not even really recyclable. You have your sachets, your multi-layered packaging, your water bags and things like that. And this material is very difficult to recycle. So I think it's a systemic issue that really needs to be addressed at the root, and trying to implement more circular solutions, reinventing the packaging that we're manufacturing to be more recyclable and be more readily recyclable with a different infrastructure that exists, and trying to cut down on the waste plastics that are unnecessary. So it is a very complex issue, and 4Ocean is starting to get involved, and we're trying to encourage businesses, brands, corporations, and nonprofits to try and do their part to help implement it, because we say it a lot, cleaning the ocean alone will not solve the ocean plastic crisis. We're sitting on a treadmill, and we will continue to be cleaning the same beaches over and over again unless we can stop it at the source.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're part now of an alliance for the Motagua River. And as a long-term plan, which is what we reported about recently, these dozens of organizations joined together to, in less than 10 years, see the recovery of a water source that has the capacity to supply all of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. I was very amazed when I read this. What does the action plan look like for this ambitious endeavor? And what have you found to be the most challenging and crucial aspects so far to keep things moving forward?
Sure. So I think it comes from a large multi-pronged approach in terms of reducing the amount of plastics, trying to implement the appropriate waste management infrastructures, putting booms and barricades into the river to try and stop plastic before it has a chance to reach the ocean, and working with all the surrounding businesses, governments, and nonprofits. That's really the main goal. And I think some of the challenges that we face are that, the Rio Motagua is it's an animal. It's a whole different beast of its own. It is a monstrous river that during heavy rains will see, elevation of the river change to 8, 10, 12 feet. We're talking about a river that is going 6, 8, 10 knots of current consistently. So when you try and implement cleanup infrastructure, booms, barricades, and things like that, you'll have giant 30-foot trees that are just coming barreling down the river that will just decimate any type of cleanup equipment that you might have in place. So there is a full list of hurdles that come with the Rio Motagua, and it's something that will just need constant refinement, tweaking, and collaboration amongst all brands, businesses, nonprofits, and governments to try and optimize and do the best that they can to stop the plastic before it gets there, as well as working upstream to stop it from entering the Motagua in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some tangible results of that work that you can share with us? And in what way do you believe that these results would have differed if you hadn't worked together as an alliance?
Sure. So in terms of the alliance, it's starting to really build momentum. We are starting to get involved. We as 4Ocean have been in Guatemala for about 4 years now, I believe. So we've been operating prior to the alliance's formation. And now it's time to really elevate things and kick it into high gear while everybody can work together to try and do that. So in terms of the results for 4Ocean, we have pulled, I have to check with the team and confirm, but I'm pretty sure between 3 and 4 million pounds of trash from Guatemala's coastline right there surrounding the Rio Motagua, and been able to employ, between 50 and 60, sometimes 70 full-time captains and crews in this area. Providing, fair living wage jobs, covering 100% of health insurance and benefits, and doing everything we can to support our captains and crew down in these areas.
So you really create basically a lot of jobs also for the local communities in your work, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Our captains and crews are hired full-time. They are employees of 4Ocean. And yes, ma'am, we cover 100% of health insurance and benefits, and we pay a fair living wage to all our captains and crew. So, this goes far beyond just cleaning plastic. The social and economic impact that we're able to have in these different areas is huge, because in some of these different remote areas, there's two options: primarily working for the Chiquita banana plantation down there, the plant, or a fisherman, catching fish. But the amount of plastic that's in the area has really affected the local fishermen's ability to earn a living. So, collecting plastic is something that has been a game changer to be able to employ these people full time.
That's incredible. And can you walk our viewers through a typical cleanup day of that scale? What does it involve, and how can we imagine it?
Sure. So we have various different vessels that are heading out with our captains and crew. So what we do is we document the entire process. So we will have our lead captain and our crew members that are going to be heading out, and we take a photograph of the crew that's heading out to clean the ocean. They'll load up their super sacks, their bins, their buckets, their bags, their gloves, their nets, all their information, all their equipment onto the vessel, and then we will head out to the cleanup areas. So what we'll do is we'll go to Punta Menabique, which is the peninsula near the Rio Motagua, and work all the way down towards the Rio Motagua. Our teams will be collecting plastic from the ocean, from the coastlines. They'll be taking it and loading it up into what's known as super sacks. They're the large blue bags that we use to transport our plastic waste. They're filling up each of these super sacks. They're loading them onto their vessel, and then they're consolidating them together at a pickup location. So after a certain amount of days of cleaning, we'll have an absolute mountain and tower of plastic in these super sacks. And then we have a landing craft barge that actually comes and picks this up. And then all of our vessels will go from the shoreline to offshore, loading up all of the plastic onto this vessel, which then takes it back to our facility. Once it gets to our facility, each individual super sack is photographed, weighed, and documented. And then all of that plastic is sorted by type, color, and condition. And then once we reach the necessary minimum order quantities for our recycling partners, we then bale that plastic into small cubes, and it's transported to our recycling partners. So as I mentioned, we document every step of the way. We take photos before, during, and after the cleanups. And our crew is cleaning, millions of pounds of plastic from these coastlines, in Guatemala.
And you were mentioning recycling partners. What comes out of these recycling processes? Do you work directly with other brands, or what's made out of this plastic?
Yes. So what we're doing is we're processing the plastic and it's turning into a pellet form. So the plastic goes to be shredded, flaked, hot washed, pelletized, and then it's a feedstock that can be used to manufacture products. So we're actually manufacturing some of our bracelets. Our bracelets are made with the recovered plastic that our captains and crews have recovered, and we're also partnering with other brands to leverage that material. So it all depends on the material, the type, color, and condition. But we are trying to eliminate the need for virgin plastic production with this material and keeping it into the economy. We also do some really cool things like manufacturing building materials. So decks,
Mhm.
beams, boards, benches, desks, things like that are being used with some of the plastic to try and find sustainable outlets and solutions for those as well.
Wow. Do you think it's possible to remove the need for virgin plastic? Because also recycled plastic is often more expensive now, or how would you rate that? Is it more expensive, or is that a myth in
So,
your
so
eyes?
the price of plastic, it's a commodity. So it fluctuates based off the price of crude oil. So sometimes recycled plastic is more affordable, other times it's more expensive. Unfortunately, in recent years and almost consistently, it's more expensive. And a lot of people think that recycle is cheaper, but due to the amount of extra time, energy, and effort that goes into taking a dirty, contaminated piece of plastic and turning it into a usable form, it requires a ton of energy and resources. And unfortunately, I don't know if we will ever be able to get rid of 100% virgin plastic. And I say this a lot, that I don't believe that plastic is the enemy. I think that it's the function and the utility that it's being used that needs to be targeted. So if you think about plastic as a material, it's lightweight, rigid, incredibly flexible, water resistant, mold resistant. Like, it's a great material, especially when it comes to things like the health and medical industry. Like, it's sterile. Like, you need plastic for certain applications. It's where the function, where it's put into a single use application for something that's designed to be used for a mere few seconds. That's when it really is problematic, because that's being consumed on a massive level. Because we use plastic in our operations all across the board, but we use them in things that are designed to last for very long periods of time and then can be recycled after that. It's just the single use that is incredibly harmful to the environment and is doing a lot of damage overall.
Can you tell us a bit more about the partnerships For Ocean maintains with other organizations and private sector actors? You were touching on it before briefly.
Yes, yes. So For Ocean has expanded. We started out by selling products to fund our mission. Now we've expanded into a new vertical where we're partnering with businesses to implement sustainability programs. So what we're doing is we're actually getting involved with businesses to try and bring them plastic neutral. So what brands are doing is, for any plastic that they are producing in their products, they are funding the removal of the equivalent amount of plastic directly from the ocean. So we're trying to implement sustainability programs where these businesses and brands can take responsibility for their plastic footprint and fund the direct cleanup of plastic from the ocean. So that's a business that's been scaling very quickly for us, and that we are moving into influencing more of the private sector and the business sector to try and get businesses to take action for their plastic footprint.
Hmm. And how do you think other marine conservation organizations can learn from your work, specifically looking at how you formed the alliance now for this river project? What do you think is needed in order to launch similar large-scale collaboration?
I think it's exactly that. I think it's collaboration. I do believe that the biggest thing that we can do is collaborate across the board. This is such a complex issue that is such a global influence across the world, that it truly is going to require the cooperation between governments, brands, nonprofits, businesses. I mean, everybody has got to work together in order to accomplish something as large of a task as this. And I think that by collaborating together and sharing ideas and really just attacking this problem with full force, this is something that we can have a lot of progress on and work together to have a massive impact in the amount of plastic in the ocean.
I think I've asked it before, but I'm not sure it fully came through. How did you form this alliance? How did it happen that so many organizations came together and said, "We're doing this"? Who started this, basically?
So I don't want to misspeak on that, but I believe it was Guatemala. I
Hmm.
have to confirm with my team. They're a little bit more involved in the details. We are actually going to Guatemala in the next couple weeks to meet with the environmental minister and to sit down and talk through this game
Hmm.
plan exactly. But I think it's been a topic that has been out there for quite a long time. But I wouldn't want to misspeak on it. But I do believe it's the country of Guatemala, but I could be wrong.
Of course. And can you dive a bit deeper again on the into the impact for the local communities? You're providing these jobs. Can you tell some specific examples of any bigger project of what it means for the local communities?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Great.
So let's go and talk about specific examples. So there's a gentleman by the name of Antonio. Antonio is one of our lead cleanup crew members, located in an area called San Francisco del Mar. This is a small community that's out located near the Rio Motagua that you can only get to by vessel. Their primary way of living has been fishing, right? So one of the first times I went down to Guatemala and we were doing our scouting and we were going to these different areas and having conversations with the locals about potentially setting up a cleanup infrastructure, I saw mountains of fishing nets on the side of the
Mhm.
beach, old, kind of falling apart mountains, just giant old fishing nets. And I asked, what is the status with all these old nets? And they said, we used to primarily fish, and that was how we provided a living for our families and for our communities. And the plastic issue has become so serious and so severe that now we've had to go further and further and further every single time to try and provide for our families. It got to the
Oh,
point
wow.
where these professional fishermen were having to go from Guatemala and go to Belize or go to basically other countries and on multi-day trips because they could not. There were no fish in the area due to the amount of plastic pollution. So I think that the impact that it has not only on the social and economic side of funding and employing these captains and crew directly, but you also have the different scenarios of trying to bring back the ecosystem, the environment, create that healthy balance to the point where the oceans can be thriving and healthy and being able to go back to the way they were before plastic had its impact. I mean, if you see the photos and the imagery, it is heavy. Like
Yeah.
when I tell you it was so alarming to me to see the first time jumping off the boat and sinking into plastic literally up to your knees or your waist and for miles down the beach. It's things that it's very hard to fathom and understand, but when you see that, you understand the severity of the problem. And I think that
Hmm.
if we, with the alliance, with these groups, the organizations, if everybody can work together to have an impact on the amount of plastic in the ocean, we do believe that the oceans will heal and that this area will get back to a thriving, beautiful environment. And that's what we need to do. And that's one of our main missions.
Yeah. Do you have an example of where the plastic cleanups already created a big difference for the fishermen so they could actually fish more again because it got cleaned up to the extent that it made a huge difference?
Yes, we do have areas that have definitely been cleaned up. In Puerto Barrios, in that area, along the beaches and coastlines of near the Rio Motagua, we've cleaned up a lot of the legacy plastic that's been buried there for years and years. Um, I don't think we're to the point just yet. We've made a lot of progress, but I think it's going to require a lot more work to be done before the ecosystem will heal itself and start to get back to a thriving, healthy ocean. So I think we're proud of the progress that we've made. We still have a long ways to go, and I think that we'll be able to do it with all these different organizations.
We talked about it before, but I'd just like to confirm again what your work looks like beyond the cleanups. Because, of course, if we produce so much plastic, as we said, that's a bottomless pit despite all efforts. So, do you work on a policy level as well, for example?
So what we're doing at Four Oceans, we're trying to drive as much awareness as possible. So we're leveraging our tactics of social media and influence across the board, trying to leverage celebrities, athletes, influencers, things like that to really drive awareness for the problem that the oceans are facing, the issue that ocean plastics uh, cause to the ocean, and what consumers and people can do on a day-to-day basis to cut down on the amount of plastic that they're consuming. We are getting involved in supporting different areas of policy and trying to support, the legislation, because at the end of the day, we really do need to have a bigger influence. We believe that it's like I said before, it's a multi-pronged problem that requires a multi-pronged solution. And I think that that's something that we really need to look at by holding businesses accountable, implementing extended producer responsibility, holding businesses that are producing massive amounts of plastic accountable for the plastic that they're putting out into the environment, forcing them to create products that are more recyclable and easily recyclable, and help support the infrastructure needed to clean, collect, and recycle this material.
Absolutely. And I think 4Ocean shows how important it is to think big in that one focused area of like awareness and cleanups. You've been very successful doing this. You mentioned the international community and individuals. I would like to ask as a final question, how can the international community of water and ocean advocates support the cause, and what can private individuals do that are looking to get involved in the cause and contribute their efforts?
Sure. So anybody that's interested, businesses, partners, we offer our sustainability programs where they can directly help fund cleanup of plastic from the ocean by partnering with 4Ocean. We'd love to get in touch. Any consumers, any of our products that are sold, everyone employs our captains and crews to remove 5 pounds of trash from the ocean for every product sold. And anybody that wants to get involved, we'd love to connect, collaborating across the board. We really appreciate people that are eager and determined to help clean the oceans. And we'd love to grow that community overall. But I think the biggest thing that they can do is to start the conversation. Bring your reusables, cut down on plastic, just by simply a small change, cutting out single-use plastic bottles, cutlery, to-go-ware, containers, styrofoam. Those are the items that we're finding in the ocean. So I think that's one huge thing that everybody can do, and to share that impact on social, because you going to clean up and doing something as small as a beach cleanup and sharing it on social, that's a butterfly effect that's impacting a lot more people than you realize.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex. That's it from my side. Do you have any more things that I didn't touch on that you'd like to get off your chest in terms of the plastic crisis or your work?
No, I think we've talked about a lot of the things. I think at the end of the day, it's we're trying to make sustainability cool. We're trying to encourage people to live a more sustainable lifestyle, and do anything you can to just keep that conversation going. That's the biggest thing that you can do across the board. And we're thrilled to have as many people support 4Ocean and be as excited about ocean cleanup as we are.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting and talking to you.
Thank you so much, Marie. You as well. Thank you for having me.